All right, there we are. Welcome everyone to another edition of Getting to Know Dynatrace. My name is David Jones. Everyone calls me Jonesy. Feel free. We'll be walking through a demonstration of Dynatrace today. Today we have Robert Williams. Hey, Robert, why don't you take a moment and introduce yourself and let everyone know who you are?
Hello, everyone. My name is Robert Williams. I'm a sales engineer here at Dynatrace. I'm based out of Kansas City, Missouri. Over the last 12 years, I've been in both engineering and architecture in multiple different industries. So, yeah.
Right on. All right. Well. Hey, welcome, Robert. Thank you very much for walking us through Dynatrace. So, folks, if you've seen these sessions before, we have a little bit of a process that we go through until we get to the demo. So, let me start by sharing my screen here. I'm gonna get things going, get my presentation running. Now, remember, folks, today's session is live. We invite you to ask questions over whatever social media channel that you're watching us on today. So when we get into the demo, fire your questions off. Let us know what you think about Dynatrace, what you want to know about Dynatrace, and we'll try our best to answer those questions. But this is Getting to Know Dynatrace. And so, as I mentioned, we always have a number of segments that we like to start off with. The first segment is What's New? So, it's been a couple of weeks since the last time we had a chance to talk with everyone. So, let's go through some of the new things at Dynatrace. Now, obviously, if you are looking for what's new at Dynatrace, the place to go is dynatrace.com/news/blog. That is where you're going to get all the latest up to date news coming from Dynatrace. This week, let's just sort of flip over here for a second and make sure everyone can see this. I'm going to go live into the blog because there's a couple of really interesting articles we want to talk about. First is this one, hot off the presses. This one is essentially a blog article talking about intelligent observability for Oracle and SQL databases. I invite you to give this a read. It's very interesting. It talks about some of the different things that we're doing with the Dynatrace extensions when it comes to monitoring your databases. As a matter of fact, it's showing here one of the new views or screens that we have, and I would, in this particular case, this one's particularly good because it talks about how Dynatrace can be used to break down departmental silos. And that's one of the things that Dynatrace really does do really, really well, which is it allows organizations to really collaborate better. And so that's one of the articles that I think that you should give a read to. Obviously, this is it's going on all the time. So the next piece is our release notes. As you may or may not know, we do 2 releases a month of Dynatrace SaaS. So there's constantly new capabilities that are being put into the Dynatrace platform. And if you just flip into the release notes, you can see the types of things that we're talking about. Down here, all of these new features. So you can see here log monitoring documentation, Kubernetes and OpenShift monitoring setup, Kubernetes and OpenShift workload and pod details, burn rate visualization, Cloud Foundry transition to settings 2.0, additional problem detection and analysis capabilities, additional extensions, dashboards, synthetic monitoring, and the list goes on and on and on and on. That really sort of shows folks, Dynatrace's commitment to innovation, right? Is the fact that every 2 weeks there's new capabilities that are being pushed out into the platform. So this is always a great page to, keep track of. Obviously in the past couple of weeks, there's been some great articles around Azure, some articles here about, how we've been named a launch partner for the Amazon EKS blueprints. And how now Dynatrace SaaS is GA also on the Google Cloud. So that basically means that Dynatrace SaaS, you can run us on AWS, you can run us on Azure, you can now run us on GCP as well. So we've got all of the major cloud vendors covered. And that basically gives you the option of you allowing you to pick and choose, not only what location do you want the Dynatrace SaaS clusters to be hosted, but what specific cloud vendor do you also want those to use for your Dynatrace SaaS cluster? So this is super exciting stuff. Now, one of the other things, speaking of Google, And I haven't done this in the past, but I think it's one of the things that I'm going to start doing more of in the future. And that's actually not just talking about Dynatrace news, but talking about items in the news that relate to Dynatrace. And the reason I want to do that is I found this article right here. This article is essentially, an article that's talking about how Google researchers have found a record number of dire software vulnerabilities last year in 2021. And I think that the timing of this couldn't be better because, one of the things that we released last year is our application security capabilities. And, I'm having conversation after conversation with organizations about what Dynatrace does for AppSec and our real unique approach to, vulnerability detection at runtime. It's a very different approach to what we've been seeing in the traditional sort of AppSec community. And so this is something that definitely should be considered, and you should be thinking about it for augmenting the tools that you're using for application security. Let's get back to our presentation here. And we just talked about what's new. Oh, I wanted to talk about this. Because actually, if you go to our blog site, and I'm flipping back and forth to everything here. If you go back to our blog site, this is actually an article that our new CEO, Rick McConnell, has written and published out there since the last time we talked. And this is super important because this really explains the reason for Dynatrace, our raison d'etre, so to speak. So our vision statement, what Dynatrace exists for, the reason that we are around is our mission is we deliver answers and intelligent automation from data. Our purpose is to enable flawless and secure digital interactions. And our vision, it's a world where software works perfectly. So this is our vision statement. I again invite you to go back to our blog article and read Rick McConnell's blog article on our vision statement. It's super insightful, and it really does give you a really good understanding as to why we exist. And so that's now time for our next segment, which is Did You Know? So this is the Did You Know segment of Getting to Know Dynatrace. So did you know that Dynatrace actually also does log monitoring? So this is something that Dynatrace has been doing for quite some time. But last year, we actually released version 2.0 of our log monitoring capability. And we've been doing some really interesting things. We've been making some acquisitions of some very interesting technologies, like our recent acquisition of SpectX. And you're going to be seeing us do a lot more when it comes to log monitoring. But one of the things that a lot of organizations aren't aware of is that not only does Dynatrace provide that just immense breadth of visibility across your environments, but we also provide that visibility all the way down into your logs. But it's not just about monitoring the logs. It's about providing the logs in the context of your environment. And what do I mean by that? So one of the most interesting things about when Dynatrace ingests log information is that we decorate that log information. You can see actually here in this screenshot down over here, you can see this information where we've got this dt.source underscore entity, and then we've got this entity host, and then we've got this entity process group instance, and this entity Kubernetes cluster. All of this information is metadata that we are attaching to that ingested log. And so what that allows us to do is that allows us to understand that this log line exists in the context of all of these different entities that Dynatrace is aware of. So it's not just a simple line of text that's being thrown out, into a log file. Now what's happening is that log is being ingested. It's being decorated with all of this metadata. So now you have context as to why this log was written out. And on top of that, we've taken things even further. You can see here that this particular, let me go back. You can see that this log actually has something called a trace ID associated with it. This trace ID allows us to actually connect this particular log item to related trace. And so you can see here that you can actually click on a link now inside of your log to actually go into the pure path view to see the actual pure path that was associated with this log line. This is new functionality. It is super cool and so exciting. It just makes things related to your logs so much easier to work with. So that's a little bit more about did you know? And that's, this week's did you know was, did you know that Dynatrace does log monitoring? And we even do more with logs than what you could, possibly imagine. So with that being said, it is now time that everyone's been waiting for. It's demo time. So we're going to hand things over to Robert. So Robert, I'm going to stop sharing my screen here, and we're going to hand things over to you. So let me just stop my sharing. And now over to you, Robert. So Robert, walk us through, start walking us through, Dynatrace. And folks, as Robert's doing this, please feel free to ask questions.
Yeah, please ask a question, make it interactive for everyone. But I'm going to start off with this dashboard here. So what I really want to start with is just talking about how the Dynatrace software intelligence platform was built to easily support over 600 technologies right out of the box. And it's doing that with automation and intelligence in mind, which Jonesy just talked about, that's one of our mission statement. So of course we got these dashboards that work great and look great, and they allow you to get a quick overview into all your application health, your infrastructure components, whether you're running Linux, Docker, if you're into Kubernetes, and also if you're multi-cloud like most of companies are, you can get VMware and AWS and Azure on a single pane of glass. And this is really important when you're troubleshooting issues. You can get all this information in one place, and you're not having to swivel your chair around to get to multiple different tools. So that's really what I want to talk about with the dashboard. But here I don't want to stop here because it's not what we're really known for. The real power is of our secret sauce is how we deploy and how our one agent works inside your environment. So in my experience, when you want to really get the full scope of your entire environment, you're usually using multiple tools, which that comes with multiple agents, and you have to manage those tools and agents over time, and you have to upgrade them. So in 2016, that's when Dynatrace redeveloped their platform because they realized that the old way of doing things wouldn't work because everyone in the industry was moving to this digital transformation, moving to DevOps. So everything is moving faster. So that's when we came out with this one agent technology. And the ideal of this is that you would actually drop it onto one of your hosts or one of your clusters. And it really doesn't matter. If you're running Windows, you can do that. If it's Linux, I'm a Linux guy, so that's what I prepare. And then you can get Kubernetes. So let me just show you how easy it is to deploy one agent into your environment. So what you would do is you would create this token here, and then you would run these three commands. And that's downloading the installer, verifying the signature, and then running that installer with root rights. And then you might have
hold on one second here.
Sure.
Robert, I think I'm waiting for the screen to catch up because I'm still on the environment overview. Still waiting for it to catch up.
Okay, well let's
there we go. Now I can see your mouse moving.
But it's sharing screens. Well, I'm just gonna
No, now we can see it. There you go. Now you're moving around. We can see you going through the nav. You're good.
But it's not sharing my other tabs. So
it's not sharing your other tabs.
So let me go into the actual deployment status here, but it's probably not going to share that.
Actually, you can do it from the hub.
So
or you can do it from there too. Yeah, that's right. Yep.
So like I was saying, sorry about that.
No, you're good, man. Keep going. All right, we're all set.
So what we do is, so if you're running Windows or Linux, you would just select that here, and then you have all this. You have these questions. So you can just create a token here. You download this installer. You verify its signature, and then you run this installer with admin privileges on the server. And then from there, you would have to, you might have to restart a few processes. So once we get all this data, that's when one agent really starts making things happen in your environment. It starts doing instrumentation automatically. It starts gathering all your processes, all your services, all your hosts in your environment. And the great thing about one agent is that it's so easy to install that you have these three commands. So if you want to install this on thousands and thousands of hosts, you can do that if you're using Ansible or Terraform or any other, information or any IAC tool.
So
So
actually, it's interesting you're talking about that using Ansible to do a mass deployment of the agent. You know what I've seen? I've actually seen some of our more mature customers. They take the agent and they bake it into their machine images. So what that does is basically the next time a developer or someone spins up a new instance of Dynatrace, it basically, the agent's automatically there. It automatically starts sending telemetry back to the cluster.
yeah, that's some really cool stuff. But so let's get back into
Keep going, man. Yep.
so once we start gathering this data, so this is what one agent and Davis, our AI assistant, sees in your environment. This is what we call our Smartscape technology map. It's a real-time topology map of your entire environment. So it's going to give you, so when one agent is deployed, it's going to start figuring out all these dependencies, all these connections. It's going to see all the processes, all the services, and it's going to start creating relationships for those components of your infrastructure. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to drill down into one of the servers we have here. So let me just drill down a bit. And the first thing you see is that it's marked in yellow. Let me drill down a little bit more so you can see that. And if I select this, what it's going to do is going to show all these, you see the arrows here that are going in and out of this host. So that's all the connections that are automatically, being discovered by our AI engine. And you also see some dotted lines here. These are the connections that are no longer active to that server, but it's within the last 2 hours. And then you see some components off on the side that has no lines, and that's within the last 72 hours. But on the left side here, you also see from just downloading this one agent onto one machine, it's going to tell you, where that server is running. It's going to tell you it's AWS and US East 1B. It's going to tell you what operating system you're running on. It's also automatically going to start discovering all these processes that are running on that server. So, and then it's going to give you the services that are attached to those processes all the way up to your front end at the application level. And so once we have all this data and we're gathering it, it's going to, I talked a little bit earlier about how we create baselines. And those baselines is how Dynatrace create problem tickets. So let me drill down into a problem ticket and show you what that looks like.
So actually, wait a second. Before you get into the talking about the problem tickets,
Sure.
let's answer. Let's take a moment and answer this question. So Adam asked this question: is there a limit to the number of mass deployments that are possible? Can you mass deploy across different OSs, say like a Mac and a PC? So there's two parts to that question. Let's take this. Is there a limit to the number of mass deployments? And so the best way I could describe it is that there are practical limits that you probably want to think about and pre-plan. So, we've had examples where call it 3 years ago, we saw a large banking customer of ours. It took them about call it a week and a half to deploy about 2,000 agents out into their environment. We had a couple of years ago, insurance company, they had actually deployed, I think the number was somewhere in the neighborhood of 33,000 agents, and they did it in 3 hours. Now, to get that level of deployment, it does take some planning. It does take some thought. And your architecture obviously also has to be designed to handle that as well. So things like active gates and all that sort of stuff, you do want to plan for it. So, can you do these things on a mass scale? Yeah, absolutely you can. But, obviously it does take a little bit of, thought ahead of time to do that. The second part was, can you deploy it across different OSs? Yeah, absolutely you can. So for Windows, Linux, AIX, Solaris, in your Kubernetes environments, yeah, you can absolutely deploy the agents out into those en masse. Now, I'm taking a pause there because you asked about Macintosh. You asked about Mac OS. So Dynatrace Agent doesn't run on Mac OS, but if you wanted to get telemetry in from a Mac machine, yeah, you could do that. You could use something like a Telegraph agent and then just pipe the data from the Telegraph agent directly into Dynatrace. Dynatrace is that smartscape that Robert was just showing us. It's smart enough to understand that, hey, here's a host entity that we are aware of. This is how it exists within our topology, and we're getting those metrics coming off of a Telegraph agent that's running on it. It's not our one agent. Now, is it going to have the same functionality as a one agent? No, absolutely it won't. It won't. Telegraph is a great technology. It's really useful, but it's not going to do the same things that the one agent does. So that hopefully answers your question, Adam. But that's a great question. Thank you very much. Robert, let's get back into talking about the problem cards.
Yeah, sure. So, so when, like I said earlier, when we install one agent onto your host or into your Kubernetes cluster, it starts gathering all this data. It starts creating baselines. So in that way, it's able to detect anomalies that are actually happening in your environment. So for this particular problem here, we can see that Davis analyzed over 13,000 dependencies to get everything you see here. And a dependency or entity that could be a database server in your data center or server running, or some JVMs that are sending transactions out. So pretty much anything that you've seen on a Smartscape, that would be your entities and dependencies that Davis is analyzing. So let's back to the problem card. We can see that the Davis analyzed that where was one affected applications, 10 services, and 2 infrastructure components in the span of 26 minutes. And so usually when you have, user impact and you have service being impacted, somebody in your organization, they want to know, what's the real business impact. And, with confidence, Davis is going to tell you exactly how many users were impacted, and it's going to tell you the number of service calls along with that, and actually drill down into these users and see who these users are. So if I'm on the marketing team per se, I can actually, send them a discount because, at that time when they're experiencing this issue, they're probably going to our competitor's site, but I can actually try to bring them back to our site to keep their business.
So,
So
it's interesting. You talked about the obvious example is, that retail example, where you have external customers, external users. Where I've seen this really become super effective is for organizations that are monitoring applications for their employees, right? Because, the traditional sort of scenario is you get a employee who is a business person, right? They know business, they know business functions. They don't know technology necessarily. So when their application doesn't work, what do? They pick up the phone, they send an email, they create a help desk ticket. And then you have your help desk person having this anecdotal back and forth with a non-technical business user basically about a technical problem. So what's wrong? Well, it's not working. That's descriptive and detailed. Thank you for that. And so you know Dynatrace is completely changes that sort of dynamic. You get people that are having you know anecdotal back and forth conversations. Now it's, hey, who's that user and what were they doing? It's like laser focused on what the problem is. So, great example about how that business impact analysis is just so important. Thanks, Robert. Keep going, man.
yeah, sure. So earlier I was talking about once you get that one agent installed onto your machine, it's going to start creating these baselines. So what we can see here is that, there's a user action duration degradation with our easy travel application, and that it automatically detected that there was a 236% in this application, and that's it's going to tell you all the browsers that are impacted, all the locations where you're running your servers. And if you have, different operating systems for your users, if it's Android, Windows, Linux, it's going to tell you all of that here. So let's jump into our visual resolution path. And this is, really a smaller picture of our Smartscape. And it's going to really, give you a picture of how the problem went through your environment in real time. So first, what we see is all our infrastructure components on the left side here. But on the right, we see this problem evolution diagram. And we can see that around 12:56, we don't really have anything going on. A few minutes pass, we got 8 ongoing-ish events. few more minutes, we got 35. A couple minutes later, we got 36. So in a span of like 5 minutes, that's over uh, 80 different alerts that if I'm on the incident management team or I'm on the infrastructure team, I'm on call, I got to, go through all these tickets to figure out what the issue is. And a lot of this is going to be logging into this server, logging into that server, and a lot of those going to be dead ends, rabbit holes, without you finding anything. So that's the really great thing about this, that Davis is smart enough to know that, all of these ongoing events are really part of the same problem.
Hey, Robert, I know you've got a background where, you've been an architect, you've sat in those war room type scenarios. What are the types of things that organizations do during, when they have a war room trying to solve a problem?
Man, it's anything from you have a database guy in there, you have your network guy in there, a lot of finger pointing, trying to figure out where the actual problem is. So like this actually eliminates all of that because it's going to tell you where the problem is. And actually when I dig into the problem a little deeper, we're going to actually be able to see the root cause so we really know what it is.
Very cool. Very cool. Right on, man. Keep going.
Okay, so let's drill back into the problem card to actually see, what the root cause is here. So first, what David is going to show us in green here. So there's something I want to point out about Dynatrace in general. We're all about colors. So we see that these green boxes here, those are things that were impacted. And if this was a live, problem going on right now, those would all be red. So so Davis is going to kind of, point you into the right direction on where to look for the actual issue. So with that said, let's dive a little deeper into this check destination service. So immediately what we're going to see is that there's an easy travel user degradation here. We have the automatically detected baselines again that was detected by one agent for you. And we see that there was a 1,300% increase on our journey service for check destination. You see the service method. And scrolling a bit down here, we see that there's one service that is calling these are four Apache Tomcat processes that are running on these servers here. So, so this is all going to help out, like when we were talking about those war rooms, where if I drill into this, I'm not going into these random servers that might be the issue. I'm actually going to know, the actual servers that are impacted. So just a lot of rich, information here. And then scrolling down a bit more, we see the colors again. We see the green. So I'm going to drill down into this green here and see what's going on. So first thing we see is that we see this deployment here that we have gray. That means at some point there a deployment happened. And since we're so embedded deeply in the code, we can see those changes to, your jar files or whatever's running your applications. And then we see the red, and that's actually the deployment change after the deployment happened. And then we see that it turns back gray here. So some type of remediation, happened. And I'm going to drill down more into this root cause to see, what actually happened. So on the left here, we see that there was no interactions with servers or queues. There was no database usage. So we can kick that database guy out of the war room. We see that there's service execution and we can see there's code execution. So I'm going to drill down into these top findings, code execution, into the hotspots, where it's going to give us the actual method that is causing this problem. And you can see it's here. It's the location parser calculate section index. And down below, we can see the method here, the service in the class that's actually looping over and over. So now, it's actually giving us that deep level code analysis to actually figure out that, hey, there was a deployment, and then now it's telling us the actual line of code, or the actual, not line of code, but the actual method that was impacted. And it's going to give you, this is 97% of the total problem. So we can say at a high level that, this is probably this is the issue. So
So,
let's drill. Go ahead.
oh no, I was just going to say. So we got another question. So this question was the deployment change discovered automatically or through an event API during CI/CD? That is a
So
great question.
that is a great question, and I'm going to actually, you're one step ahead of me. I'm going to actually get to that on the problem card. So, do you want to answer that, or do you
No,
want
no,
me to?
no. You go ahead. Show them.
Okay, cool. So, so when one agent, when it's correlating all the data in your environment, and if it's integrated with tools like ServiceNow, any change management tools, it can actually determine that this deployment change was actually part of the actual problem. So, and it's going to tell you. You just asked about the remediation. So we're integrated with Ansible Tower, so you can do that remediation automatically if something like this happens. And this deployment tab is also going to give us who the owner of that change is. I can reach out to Chuck Ryan and not 10 different people who would usually be in a war room. We know exactly who the owner is to figure out this issue. We know what the git commit number is, so we can mark that as a bad commit, or even down to the approver if we want to go to that level. So hopefully that answers your question. Does that kind of help out?
That's a perfect start there, Robert. Absolutely. So to just to complete the thought on this and that question. So in this scenario, this deployment, as Robert pointed out, we're getting this information about the deployment from our connection with ServiceNow. So that CI information is being used in this case to populate, some, event in Dynatrace. However, if you were using something like Jenkins or say Azure DevOps, absolutely you can integrate with those other CI/CD tools that you're using to manage your pipeline, and you can have them forward event information to Dynatrace so that Dynatrace becomes contextually aware of when events are occurring within your pipeline. And so we do have an event API for ingesting exactly that type of information. So fabulous question. Thank you very much for asking that. What you'll also see is that with our new cloud automation capabilities inside of Dynatrace, there are now specific functions for defining things like SLOs that can then be used to help drive release automation. So there's other information that you can include within your projects to allow us to basically understand those releases and attach that information to allow Dynatrace to give you better visibility and do more automated release management. So great question. Great question. Thanks for walking through that, Robert. Okay, let's just keep going.
Okay, sure. So I kind of want to pivot a little bit and go to our front end and show you how Dynatrace allow you to analyze your application from the front end level. So let me drill down into front end over here, and I'm going to I'm going to pick a application. Let's go to mobile apps. I'm going to go to this easy travel mainframe. So this is how Dynatrace shows you your application level. So what we see here is that it's automatically going to give you the user experience. It's going to give you the number of users. It's going to give you your app dex rating. So if your users are experiencing any JavaScript issues, it's going to show up here. We're also going to show you the crashes. We're going to give you the web requests, and then the actual services that are, that this is contacting. So let's drill down into this over here, and let's look at the service flow. So the great thing about the service flow is that I might not know how a application request goes through the environment, but the service flow is going to, it's going to show you every point that request goes through. So, and it's going to give you the response time that it took to get there. So we started the Easy Travel Mobile. We went to the web server. There's a Tomcat server here, and then it's going to go all the way to the end through another Tomcat into your database. So this is all going to happen automatically for you. It's going to give you that visibility, that you might not know if you weren't part of the actual architecture in the environment.
So let's do a couple things here, actually,
Sure.
Robert. See the services up top there? The three services in the upper right side, and there's a little dot. This is a hint. Okay. That little dot. No, scroll down. It's in the service flow map. Yeah,
oh
right
yeah,
there.
okay,
Yeah,
right.
that one.
Yeah.
So go ahead and select one of those queues, the IBM MQ down there. All right. So when you see those little dots inside of the service flow map, that means there's more that you can drill down into. Now what's happened is we can see that from that booking service, we're hitting a queue. It's hitting an MQ listener, and then it's going off to kicks. Okay, so now we're on the mainframe. So I got to take a second and just sort of pause here. And this is, where we at Dynatrace, are particularly proud of how we do things, because what Robert's showing is, we started at a mobile device. We started at somebody's phone. Somebody was clicking on something. And then we've traversed all the way through the front end. We've traversed into the middle of the application, into the queues. And now we're traversing these transactions all the way back to a kicks region that's going off to additional queues and even DB2 running on the mainframe. So that's literally going from mobile to mainframe in one view. That, for organizations, is just super powerful information and the key to making sure, and this going back to what we started with our vision, making sure that this software runs perfectly every time. Great example, Robert. Just fabulous. Also, so we gave you a little hint here, folks. We gave you a little hint in the service flow mat. When you see those little itty bitty dots, they're usually an indication that there's something further down the chain. But there's other things that we want to point out here. For example, that round dot that exists over on the left-hand side in the middle, that there, yeah. This is a proxy chain. So if you've got a load balancer, if you've got like a firewall, if you've got some sort of device, an appliance, something where a one agent wouldn't run necessarily, we're still contextually aware that those devices are there and they're part of this service flow. So that's another thing that I just sort of wanted to call out. Thank you, Danny. Yeah, no,
Yeah, thank
absolutely.
you. That's awesome.
Yeah, appreciate that feedback. Definitely. Sorry, Robert, I jumped right in there, but you just picked such a perfect example. It's a great example, man.
Yeah, you just hit the other great things about the service flow. So I'm glad you said those things. But let's go back into um this front end,
Hmm.
and let's drill into. Earlier I talked about how we're able to analyze users and their sessions. So let's look into that a bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to search for so I got my application selected. I only want to find users who's experienced crashes. Um, let's change this time frame here. So the great thing about Dynatrace is when you're actually, you have a time frame selected, it's going to keep that time frame throughout every click. So, in most tools you have to, you know, you switch page, you got to reset the time frame. You got to pick the page, reset the time frame. But Dynatrace is going to hold that context for you automatically. But let me just expand this out a bit so I can get more data. So what I'm looking for is I'm filtering the easy travel application mobile mainframe. I want all crashes and I want users that have session replay. So I'm going to talk about how this works a bit. So this is our real user monitoring. And the way this happens is for web applications, when you install one agent, it automatically injects into the browser and is able to, look at that entire transaction, the entire request, all the user actions, all the clicks, and it's going to give you, everything you need to see. So let's drill into Sylvia here, and let's get some information about her user experience. So we can see that Sylvia, she was using our application version 8.2. So we're going to know your application version. We're also going to see what operating system she was running on her mobile phone. We're going to get her screen resolution. So we can actually tie all these together to give you to help you troubleshoot an issue a lot faster. And down here we can see that we analyze the time frame. So these are all going to be all the events and actions that Sylvia clicked during this session. So we see all of this. We can see um, when she's loading our page. We can see when she's dismissing buttons, or we can see her login. Or, of course, everything's going to be masked and whatnot. So let's actually from here and let's actually look at our session replay. So what this session replay is going to show you, it's going to actually usually like you have people calling in saying our app doesn't work, or maybe you're getting bad reviews on your mobile app. And then so now this gives like your QA team, your developers, actual visual replay of how to how the user actually seeing this in real time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change this down and slow it down a bit. I'm going to start this. So what we see here is that she's on our mobile phone. She doesn't want to join our loyalty program, so she dismisses that. Flips her phone. She flips her phone again. It's like she's entering her password here. This is where the data is masked, so you're not violating any regulations. She's logging in, so we see that happening, and then so in a few seconds you're gonna see us run into a crash here, and she's actually searching for her destination, and you see that on here she puts in a weird character, and that's when the actual app crashed. So if I'm, like I said before, if I'm a QA team, if I'm the mobile developers, I can actually see this in real time, and I can actually see exactly what our user was experiencing. And I actually can drill down into this and get more details. So let me do that for a bit and open the crash details here. So what this is actually the stack trace from the mobile device. So if I am on an incident team, or if I am on the infrastructure team, or it really doesn't matter, because um, we want all your users to join Dynatrace. We want them to have their own login so they can they can view it for themselves. And and if I want to, I can actually analyze this crash group a bit farther. And what I see here is this is all the users that have actually experienced, this crash. I can see that it's only app version 8.231. It's only Apple devices. It's Wi-Fi connections, only from Austria. So this is all data that you can use to help, expedite solve issues in your environment, and you actually can upload the mapping file uh, to help solve it. So,
Robert, hold on. I got to take a pause for a second, because
sure.
in all of the time that we've done this, not one of the other people that have been doing a demo for us has actually walked us through a mobile example of a user session, complete with session replay from a mobile device, from a native app, and walked us through this whole scenario. So right off the bat, thank you very much. Kudos, man. That is just an awesome example. Um, okay, we got a question here. How does it work if the server uses a reactive architecture, something like Java RX or Webflux? Now, off the top of my head, I haven't had a lot of exposure myself to Java RX. However, I do know that we absolutely support things like Spring Webflux. So, in scenarios, if you're using a reactive architecture, definitely on the Spring Webflux side, that is something that we support. From a mobile standpoint, obviously, React is something that you see all the time that's being used for mobile front ends and that sort of stuff. And yeah, we support that as well. So, Ishan, great question. Thank you for that. So, Robert, I'm sorry I interrupted you, just to give you a kudos on walking us through an example in getting to know Dynatrace that we don't often walk down, and it's just I'm just so happy that we were able to get to do that today. So thank you for that. All right, man. Just what do we got next? What do we want to talk about?
Um, let's see. Let's let's go with let's go into let's go back into a problem card and actually see some pair paths and some deep tracing.
Yeah, let's do that. Sounds good.
So let's select easy travel. Let's go front end, applications. Sorry about that.
No, all good, man. Perfect. All right. So one of the things that as Robert's pulling this up, you may have noticed that the user sessions that we were looking at, some of them had a little icon next to it. Those showed live user sessions. So we use the term that Dynatrace monitors in near real time. But what that basically means is that in a situation where we have a user that is has a session that's currently underway, these are things that we get visibility into, so we can absolutely see a live user session. So somebody is working away on their computer. That beacon that we're using to monitor that user's application, their session, that's constantly sending back information to us in real time. That allows us to get those live session information, that live session information. So we're back to another user session. Robert, why don't you walk us through this example here? Because whoever this person is, they've got a lot of problems by the looks of it.
Okay, you want to go through this one?
Yeah.
So we can see that this is a real user here. We can see that they're coming in from Chrome, a browser. We can get the same details like their screen resolution. But again, we're going to get, since we're following the whole, we're going to see every single user actions, the clicks, the frustrations, any thing that the user is doing on the front end, and we're going to be able to see all that. But let's drill a little bit into this this waterfall analysis to actually get a little bit more details. So here, we're going to get able to see everything from this user sessions, all the loads, how long the page took to load, each click, and we actually can drill into these traces to get more details. So let's find a good one here. Let's go with this jQuery. Oh, it's not it. But yeah, I don't think I can drill from this page, but what we can see is that we can get all this data about what was going on, the load time, the started time, the TCP connections, the size of the packets, so all this information here.
Yeah. So for your front end web developers, what Robert's showing us, this is critical type of information, because what we're doing is we're actually looking and seeing how did this page load in the end user's browser. So as somebody loads that page, these are, in many cases, we're using things like the W3C navigation timing metrics, and they provide us insight into how things are behaving within that browser as this page is loaded. Actually, though, hold on a second, Robert. If you scroll over and put your cursor over the blue bar associated with the orange JSF, yep, no, that's not a good example, but keep going down, because I thought for a moment there a couple of things popped up with traces.
Yeah, I think it changed with one of our latest upgrades.
Okay.
They actually just changed. It used to say peer paths, but
yeah, no, but that's what I was curious. Like, just scroll down a bit on a couple of these.
Yeah, 1 second.
Resource requests here.
Let's see.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, give that a try. I'm curious because that.
Let's actually look at the full trace. That'll give us a bit more details. That's not a good one.
But in this case here, this is actually it's interesting because, one, what it's doing is it's showing some new capabilities that we added recently around distributed traces. So if you've been a long-time Dynatrace user, you understand the whole concept of a pure path. And actually, hold on a second here. I'm just looking at my other screen, and it looks like we've switched to a different view.
My bad.
No, it's okay. Got some video things happening here. I'm up on the what's new. Not sure what's going on there. Maybe that's, hold on a second. That might just be me. You know what? That's just me on my monitor. Sorry, I completely interrupted you, Robert, and that was entirely my fault, because my other monitor here, which I'm watching us actually do stuff, showed something different. So let's get back to this. So Robert, what he did was he brought us into this distributed traces view, And this is great because in the past, if you've been familiar with Dynatrace, you knew about the concept of our pure path, right? Which is a very unique way that we combine spans and traces. But now with open telemetry, right? Now with open telemetry, we could be ingesting trace information that's not coming from a Dynatrace one agent necessarily. And so we've actually opened up Dynatrace to ingest traces coming from open telemetry sources. And that view that Robert's showing us right now is exactly how you get to see that. So
Is
this
there
is,
any
go ahead.
I was gonna say, did you want me to drill down into any of this, or?
No, I think this is a good, you know what? Let's we're getting near the top of the hour. Let's see if there's any additional questions, from the folks that are watching. If you do have a question, feel free to type it into whatever social channel that you're watching us from. We'll definitely try our best to answer that question. But we're doing a good job here. We've walked through a couple of different really interesting examples, like Robert walking us through that mobile example. That was awesome. That service flow that you showed us going from mobile to mainframe, just perfect. I think it's it really illustrates the types of things that we do. You know
I
what?
got to give
Go ahead.
kudos to my teammate Gary Carr for showing me that the mobile mainframe parts. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We love shout outs, and Gary is a great guy. We'll be having some drinks with him next week in LA, won't we?
Yes, sir.
All right. So, you know what, folks? If there's no other questions, I tell you what, I think we'll probably call it then. Robert, thank you so much for walking us through those examples today. Just great examples, really well executed. Thank you so much. If there's no additional questions, folks, hey, listen, thank you very much for your time. I hope you got a lot of new things out of Dynatrace, this getting to know session. We love doing these getting to know sessions. We have a lot of fun with them, and we hope you guys get good value out of it. So, folks, with that, I think what we'll do is we'll just sign off here. And I know Robert, you got to go pick your kids up, so we'll give you a little extra time to do that. And folks, with that, we'll see you on the next episode of Getting to Know Dynatrace in 2 weeks' time. So feel free to tune in then. And thank you very much for the questions, folks. And with that, we'll call it a day. So long, folks. See you next time.
Thank you all.